Hello friends, my name is Aubrey. Welcome back to my channel. I'm so happy to have you all here with me today. So I'm gonna go ahead and say it is actually storming outside. It just started a little bit ago, so if you hear any rain or wind or thunder, it'll just, I guess, add to the atmosphere. So today it is time for my reading wrap up for the second quarter of 2025. So we'll be going through all the books that I read in the months of April, May, and June. And we're just going to go chronologically from the first book that I finished to the last book that I finished at the end of June. So the first one that I have here to talk to you guys about is Loud of Count's Family, novel number 3 by Rekhyt. I actually have also read novel 4, which is later in this list, but we'll go ahead and talk about them together and then I'll just show you where in the pile it falls. But this is a really fun series that I am just having such a good time with. It is an isekai story. We follow a guy from Korea who is isekai'd into a novel series that he has been reading, one that he has not finished but is in the middle of, as a sort of minorly antagonistic character named Kale Hinatuse, who is the son of a count in this world. And the new Kale decides to use his position to ensure that he and the people he cares about, the people in this world who he grows to care about, that they can all live lives of luxury and ease. However, in order to do that, he first needs to make sure that that's going to be possible. So he actually ends up getting involved in the plot of the novel series, and all of the conflict that is going on. There is a secret terrorist organization, and he is being sucked in and involved in this conflict. And it's just a really, really fun story. I really like reading about characters who are very competent at what they do, and Kale is that. He is very, very good at getting what he wants. He is very good at knowing how to work with people and get people to work for him. But he also he sees himself as very like self-serving, and while he definitely is, he also has a very kind side that to him he doesn't really recognize. He's always like, well, of course I'm gonna help this person because then I get this out of it, kind of thing. But the people around him recognize this kinder side to him and how he really is a good person, even if he can be a bit selfish. And it's fun to see this sort of found family dynamic build up with these characters flocking around him and him not really knowing why. I just think that that's really fun and enjoyable. It's kind of the same feel to the Scum Villains Self-Saving System by Mosham Tongshu, if anyone is familiar with that. That one is a romance, whereas this one is not, but the isekai elements and the idea of a main character who is trying to keep themselves alive and divert the plot and unknowingly winning the loyalty of those around them, that element is very similar. But Kale is a very different character to Shin Ching-cho from the other series, because like I said, Kale is very, very good at, he's very intelligent, he's very good at strategy, he's very good at looking ahead and planning these different steps to ensure that he gets what he wants, and knowing how to play the situation almost like a game of chess. And I just think it's really fun to read. It is very over the top. The magic system makes no sense. You just have to kind of accept that people can do what they want. We have some definitely overpowered characters, which I've mentioned before. I don't mind an OP character as long as they're written well, or the way that they're incorporated, there's like humor involved and you recognize like, yeah, this is ridiculous that this person is so strong, but it's like fun to see other people's reactions to them. I enjoy that. So this is a series that I'm really having a lot of fun with. We're seeing a lot of progression with the actual plot that Kale is having to deal with and all of his friends are becoming involved in. And just seeing their relationships with one another continue to grow and bringing more and more people in, but also learning about what's going on with their opponents, we are getting some more progression with that, and I'm just really enjoying it. It's nothing like super groundbreaking. It's not written in some beautiful style. It's just really fun and I really enjoy it, and I really like the characters. So I should also mention this is translated from Korean, but yeah, I'm having a blast with it. And then the next thing that I read has actually become a new all-time favorite book of mine, and that is Under the Earth, Over the Sky by Emily McCoy. This book is so beautiful. We follow King Iroot, who is the king of the Fae, and one day when he is visiting the human world, he comes across a small baby, and he ends up adopting this baby and taking him home. And even though he himself has made a law that Fae are not allowed to bring humans back into the Fae realm any longer because it is not good for them, it can actually make them go mad, have adverse effects on their health. So he's done this to keep Fae from, either intentionally or unintentionally, hurting humans. However, he breaks his own law to care for this baby, and we see this relationship between him and this child, but also this is a very, very slow burn, character-focused story. We really get into Iroot and his insecurities as king, and his love, his genuine love for his people and his lands, and his sense of responsibility to protect them and care for them. And also, like I said, his insecurities because he is the ruler, and when you're the ruler, how do you balance being that sturdy standing stone for your people while also being a person and having fears and worries and emotions, and seeing him like dealing with this and also raising this little baby who he has adopted. And there is also a mystery in here, but I don't want to give too much away, because when I went into this, literally all I knew was Fae King adopts baby and something from his past resurfaces. That's all you really get from the synopsis, and I don't think you need to know more than that. This was really not what I expected going into it, but I love it. Like I said, it is so slow burn, so closely focused on Iroot as a character, but it's beautiful. It's beautifully written. It's, I think whimsical is probably the best word to describe this book, because the descriptions of the magic and the land in which Iroot and his people live, you just have to kind of accept it. It's like a very soft magic system where you don't really get rules for it. It's more like this concept of like wild magic, right? Like magic that is connected to nature, and it is a part of everything in this realm where they live. And it's so lovely. I love this book so much. This is a book that I wish so badly that I could go back and read for the first time again. It also has some illustrations in it that I believe are actually from the author. So you can see here on the title page, Iroot's hand and the little baby hand gripping his finger. And then it has sections that are broken up into the seasons, and for each one there is a full spread illustration, and then for each section has a different little like header illustration for the chapters. But it also plays with time in a very interesting way, because obviously the Fae are, if not immortal, at least extremely long-lived, and so the way that they perceive time is very different from the way we would perceive it. So that takes a little bit of getting used to, I think, but I think if you approach this story with just the expectation that this is going to be a new world and experience something that is magical and wild, like stepping into nature, you're not going to understand everything that you see, but you can still see and experience it. That's kind of the way that I read this, and it's beautiful. And Iroot and the baby, I don't want to say too much about the baby, but their relationship, so lovely, so beautiful. I love stories, like I said, about found family and family dynamics. and like positive family dynamics, I guess I should clarify. And I'm also a very big proponent of adoption, which obviously takes place in here. And the way Ayamar sees this baby is he's his son. It doesn't matter where he came from. It doesn't matter any differences that he may have. Like, it doesn't matter that he is not actually related to Ayamar. None of that matters. This is his baby. And I thought that that was beautifully done, like beautifully expressed in here. Just that all-encompassing love that he has for this child. And he literally loves him no differently than he would if he had a direct hand in his creation. So I loved it. I love it so much. I cannot recommend it enough. I don't know if this author has written anything else. I do believe that this is an indie published book. It does have a publisher on the spine, but it's not one that I've ever heard of. So I wonder if it's one that publishes indie works. I'm really not sure, but I need to find out if this author has written anything else or is planning to, because I will definitely check it out. Also, I showed this in the video where I hauled this book, but if you haven't seen that, I just have to show off the naked hardcover. Absolutely gorgeous. Then I finally read a book that has been on my TBR for several years now, and that is The Little White Horse by Emily Googe, or Goge. I'm not exactly sure. Oh no, Elizabeth, not Emily. Elizabeth Googe. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce her surname, but this is the Folio Society edition that my mom gave to me for Christmas several years ago, because she knows that I love unicorns and I love classic fantasy, and she thought that I would enjoy this. Based on the premise of it, and I did really like this. We follow, and it is actually illustrated, I will also say, but we follow our main character, who is named Maria, and she has recently been orphaned, although she was never really had a good relationship with her parents, but she has recently been orphaned, and she and her caretaker are moving to Moonacre Manor. Yes, Moonacre Manor, to live with her cousin, who is kind of a lord of this land, the land of Moonacre and the village of Silvery Dew. And so they are going to this manor house to live with him, and on the way to the manor house, Maria sees a little white horse silhouetted in moonlight. And when they get there, she realizes that there is a mystery about this house and this village that has to do with a previous young lady who lived there, and perhaps several previous young ladies who lived there, and that now she is a part of this story. And I really liked this. It was published for the first time in 1946, so it is a classic fantasy story. It is written, I believe, for, like, in a way, younger readers can definitely read this. It does have quite a bit in it that is kind of extolling the attitudes of the time period, in that there are some comments made about how women and girls should behave in society, which obviously that part you might just want to, like, brush past. But I won't say that it is negative towards women, because our main character Maria is very headstrong and very good at going on these adventures and getting involved in these situations and trying to help others and solve problems. But there are comments made about just the attitudes about women and how they differ from men, how people thought they differ from men, which obviously are, you know, it is what it is. It was, like I said, published in the 40s, but it's still really fun. It's also very whimsical, because just like the town itself, like the atmosphere in here was very cozy with the manor, and everything just has like this little touch of magic to it, and it almost feels like when you're a child and you know, imagine going off and becoming like the lady or the lord of this house and getting to explore. It's set in the English countryside, and the way it describes the seasons and the nature in the park outside and the orchard and the forest and the little village, like all of the descriptions are so lovely. It's so homey and cozy and beautiful, and it really just brought out that sense, like I said, of when you're a kid and you just, everything seems magical. So that was really nice. That was a very, very lovely feeling to have. And also it's the type of story that just reminds you of being a kid. And it's just really lovely. Everything, every little thing that is, even stuff that seems normal, like what they eat and the cook who works at the house and all these things are magical and beautiful. And interesting. Like Maria is from the city. She's never really lived in the country before, and everything is beautiful to her and everything is interesting to her. And that's such a lovely way to feel. So I really, really enjoyed it. If you, like I said, just get past some of the stuff about some of the attitudes on gender norms from the time period. It's really beautiful. It does have a number of Christian elements in it as well, so if that's something you enjoy reading, that is in here. Just like with the pastor and talking about living the way that God would like you to live. And I just really liked it. It was just really cute and sweet and pleasant. It made me tear up a couple of times, and like I said, it just really brought forth that cozy childhood wonder, and I really enjoyed it. Then I read a little 2-volume manga series called Springtime by the Window by Suzuyuki. So we have volume 1 and volume 2. This is the complete series, so I have now completed this. This was cute. I enjoyed it. It was cute. The further on I read, the more attached to the characters I got. The art style was a little bit awkward at times, I think, with the characters' like faces and heads. And the backgrounds were often very simplistic, especially at the beginning, but I did enjoy it. I did become invested in these characters' lives. I did want to see what was going to happen to the 4 of them. So it was cute. It was a cute little sweet high school romance. But we follow 4 characters. We have Yamada, Sino, Akama, and what is his name? Toda. So Yamada and Akama and Toda are all friends, and Yamada has been friends with Sino since they were very small and has a huge crush on her. Meanwhile, Akama and Toda maybe have some feelings for each other. They've also been friends for a long time. So we're really just following these 4 as they are trying to figure out feelings and dating and romance versus friendship. I will say, if you are looking for a story that is going to have 100% resolution, that is not this. The ending was a little open-ended. I'm not going to say how, but I did enjoy the characters. I did think it was really cute. I really liked the festival scene, and their clothes were pretty. There was some parts that were really funny. Overall, yeah, it was okay. It was good. Not a favorite, but I did think it was cute. I guess I should kind of explain a little bit why it's not like a favorite. The pacing was the pacing was a little bit weird with some of the time skips and some of the interactions between different characters, and like each chapter, for the most part, there are a couple of exceptions where the story continues like directly into the next chapter, but a lot of the chapters there are time skips after each one. They're each kind of like a contained story within this story, still following the premise of these four trying to get themselves together, but I don't know, the pacing was kind of odd. Like I said, the art style was a little weird at times. I also just felt like there was so much refusal to talk to each other, and that's really frustrating for me, so that was frustrating, but it was cute. It was a cute little romance. But then we moved to another all-time favorite. So I finally read the entire series of The Cemeteries of Amalo by Catherine Addison. This series is a sequel to the Goblin Emperor. So the overarching series is the Chronicles of Ozreth. It starts with the Goblin Emperor, and then you have the Cemeteries of Amalo, which is a trilogy. And in this series, we follow a character we meet in the Goblin Emperor named Thara Kelahar, and he is a witness for the dead, meaning it is his job when he is petitioned by either law enforcement or the families or friends of someone who has passed away. It's his job to kind of get resolution for whatever they need help with, whether that's figuring out how they died, getting justice for them, or assisting with some question that has been left behind after their death. And he is living in the city of Amalo, where he is working as a witness for the dead. And I don't want to say anything about why he's there or any more about his job exactly, because I highly recommend that you read the Chronicles of that you read the Goblin Emperor first. So the Chronicles of Ozreth as a whole. Start with the Goblin Emperor, because Thara Kelahar is a character you meet in that book, and his circumstances at the start of book 1 of the Cemeteries of Amalo, which is the Witness for the Dead, are very, very much based on the Goblin Emperor and stuff you learn about him there and stuff that he does within that book. So do not start here, definitely start with the Goblin Emperor. But I did read all 3, so we have The Witness for the Dead, The Grief of Stones, and The Tomb of Dragons. And I love them so much. I love the mystery aspects because in his job as a witness for the dead, Thara does often get involved in murder cases, or mysterious deaths, as the case may be, and trying to find resolution and justice for these people. And so there are mysteries in each of these, which is really, really fun to follow. Thara also just goes through such a hard time. I love him as a character. He is so sweet and wonderful. I was put off reading this for quite a while because I was really worried because we weren't going to be following Maya, who is the main character in the Goblin Emperor, or any of the other main side characters. But it was fine. I love Thara. I love him just as much as Maya, so I really needn't have worried because Catherine Addison's character work is impeccable. I really love them. She does such a good job of making you care about these characters and making them feel real to you and making this world seem so real and so much bigger than what's just contained in one little story, if that makes sense. But I loved it so much. I love Thara. He's such a sweetheart. He has a very low opinion of himself. He doesn't have hardly anything in the way of physical possessions or wealth. He lives very, very meagerly. And seeing him making friends and finding people who love him and care about him and want to help him and learning to open up to these people was just so wonderful, on top of the extremely fun mysteries that you have in here. And just this world. I love the world of the Athuvaraz, which is like the Elven Empire. I guess I should say this takes place in a world where elves and goblins exist. It takes place within the Elven Empire, of which Maya, who is the main character in the Goblin Emperor, is the ruler. And I love this world. I love it so much. I don't know what it is. It has steampunk elements, it has magic, but it's just, I love it. And that's another thing Catherine Addison is really good at doing, is making the world just feel real and amazing and addictive. But I love Thara so much, and the other characters around him, like Anora. I love Anora. And Eanna. Eanna is one of my favorite characters in this series. Now, I will say, the ending of The Tomb of Dragons was a little bit confusing for me. I didn't dislike it, and I'm not saying that I completely disagree with it. However, I do feel like certain things that are built up within the first 2 books are suddenly flipped on their head at the end of book 3. I can't really give too many details without spoiling it, but just certain things that you feel like are important to certain characters, or that have been kind of, it feels like it's been leading towards, are suddenly different. And again, I can see how it got to this point looking back on it, but I don't think that if I were writing this story, that's not how I would have gone with the ending. Because I felt like it's one of those cases where you can make the argument that this makes sense, that the ending that we have makes sense, but there was an ending that I think, and I'm not just talking about, how do I want to say this without spoiling some stuff, some important things? There were several things about the ending that I think just didn't mesh with the characters' characterization, the things that they found important, the things that they wanted throughout the rest of the series. And then also there was some lead up towards something that I think a lot of people felt was going to happen that then didn't happen, which was a little odd, personally, because I really felt like it was leading somewhere and then it didn't. But again, I'm not saying I disagree with this ending at all. I'm just saying it was not the ending I expected by any means. But I still really, really loved this series. I still highly recommend it. It was wonderful. I read these 3 just back to back to back so quickly, because as soon as I finished one, I had to get the next one off my shelf and just devour it. And I tried to be like, okay, we're gonna take some time because I know I'm gonna be sad when I'm done with them, but I couldn't, because once I started, I was so immersed and it was so good. I just kept going, and I got the 3 of these read so quickly, and it's just amazing. I literally cannot recommend the Chronicles of Ozareth enough. Maya and Thara are just amazing characters. They're 2 of my favorite characters of all time, and I just love it immensely. So highly recommend. Also, the prose is beautiful. The way it's written is so easy to follow, but so beautifully done. I will say, Catherine Addison does not shy away from incorporating a fantasy language in here, in that the names of places and people and certain things are not in English. So there is a pronunciation guide in the front of, I think, I know at least the copy of The Goblin Emperor that I read. I haven't looked in my other editions to see if they have it or not. I imagine they would, but there is a pronunciation guide in the front of The Goblin Emperor, as well as an explanation for certain suffixes that are attached to people's names based on their rank in society. But really, once you get the hang of it, don't let that intimidate you, because I think a lot of people pick up The Goblin Emperor and get really scared by the strange names. But once you get the hang of it, it's really easy. And it makes sense. I will still always remember, some of these surnames and some of these, or not surnames, some of these suffixes and some of these titles that people are given, like Mur and Murim and Othala and Othallo and all these things. And Dachosman, is it Dach? Yeah, Dachosman and Dachosmer. I'm gonna forever remember these. Once you get them, you get them. So don't let that scare you away. I just wanted to give that warning because it's so worth it. It's so worth it. And honestly, I loved the names. I thought that having these names that were clearly from a different society really just made it seem even more realistic, and I really liked it. And then, continuing in the Chronicles of Ozareth, I read The Orb of Ky. This is a very short little novella set within this world. It actually takes place during the events of the Goblin Emperor, because it starts where the Goblin Emperor starts. But it takes place in a completely different city, and we get to see how the beginning of the Goblin Emperor, the events of that book, affect someone else. So in the Goblin Emperor, we follow Maya, who is the half goblin, half elven son of the emperor who has been sent away from court. There's a lot of prejudice against him because he is half goblin, and he is never meant to hold any kind of real rank in the empire. However, at the beginning of the story, he learns that the airship on which his father and all of his older brothers were traveling has crashed, and they have all perished, and suddenly he has become the emperor. So that is actually how this book opens as well. We follow, and I'm gonna have to look up his name, Olketha. We follow Olketha, who is a scholar who previously worked at the University of Kyrato, but was fired because he was accused of stealing an important artifact. So he's been working, basically creating false documents for smuggled goods and fake artifacts. But at the beginning of the story, he finds out that his best friend, who was working on that airship, has also perished in the crash. And he receives something from him that was bequeathed to him in his will that suddenly sets him off on this journey that is related to that artifact he was accused of having stolen. So there is another mystery element to this as well. It is very, very short. And it's just a really fun time. I don't love it as much as the other books in this series, but still, it's Catherine Addison. It's beautifully written. It's very clever, very well done. And it's set within one of my favorite fantasy worlds. So I really, really loved it. So now I'm completely caught up on the Chronicles of Ozareth, and I'm just so hopeful that she continues to write more. I refuse to say that I have completed this series because I desperately want more. So I'm so hopeful she'll write more in this world. Just fingers crossed, I guess. But for now, I am up to date. Not saying completed. Then I read another very short little book, and that is Swan Night by Fumio Takano. This is translated from Japanese by Sharni Wilson. This is interesting. I had never heard of this until I saw it one day when I was getting something from Blackwell's, and they had this on sale, and I was instantly drawn in by this cover because who wouldn't have their eye caught by this? And then I read the premise and I was like, this is really interesting and I want to know what's going on with this. So this does take place in an alternate version of Earth. It actually takes place in Bavaria at the end of the 19th century. And so the king of Bavaria, King Ludwig II, spends his time watching a lot of TV. He is obsessed with this mysterious composer named Wagner. And when I say composer, he doesn't just compose music. Like, TV exists here, and they have all of these really extravagant productions of musicals and plays that they televise. And King Ludwig is obsessed with Wagner's creations. He desperately wants to meet this composer. So he kind of comes up with a plan to go out and find him. Then we also follow our second perspective, who is Carl, who is an aspiring composer and a rookie singer who has been hired by Wagner's company and suddenly finds himself with a premier role in Wagner's most famous, or in the most recent interpretation of Wagner's most famous composition, the Swan Night. And Carl is suddenly playing the lead, the Swan Night himself. Carl is also working on a plan to try to, how do I want to say this? He learns about something that he finds a little suspicious and starts trying to involve himself in the situation. I'm trying to be as vague as possible because, like, this is a wild ride, especially for such a short little book. I did not expect pretty much anything that happened in here. It's very, very strange. It's almost like a fever dream. Like, you just kind of have to accept everything that's happening and you're like, I am so confused. I'm so baffled. But sure, let's keep going. There's like an underground city in Bavaria, and there are several characters who you don't really know their motivations or who they are, and it just feels, especially from Ludwig's perspective, it is so confusing. I did kind of figure out what was going on, or at least I figured out part of what was going on as the story went on. But I kind of told myself, I'm like, no, there's no way that's where this is going. And then as it went on, I was like, yeah, I think that is where this is going. But it's just so strange. It deals with questions of fame and how the public perceives those who are famous, and mental health, and this idea of TV and stories and what's real and what's not real. And it's interesting and it's bizarre. So if you like that kind of thing, if you like really, really strange kind of speculative fiction, there you go. It's so odd. But it was very interesting. So, very short, very quick little read. Then the next book that I read was actually for the book club that my brother runs, and that is Iroot, which is the first book in the Robot series by Isaac Asimov. I quite liked this. I will say, going into this book, if you've seen the movie, this is nothing like the movie adaptation, Iroot. This is, as I said, the first book in a series, and I really think this is kind of a setup novel. It is composed of a number of short stories. We have a reporter who has gone to interview, what is her name? Susan Calvin, who was the first robot psychologist and is the foremost person in her field and is now retiring. So he has gone to interview her to get her opinions and her take on things that have happened since kind of the initial creation of androids and artificial intelligence. And she tells him several different stories from her career and from when she was younger, starting with the first one. And that is what this book is made of. There is not like a coherent one whole story in here. It's several different stories with recurring characters, and each story is kind of formulaic in that there's a problem with a robot, they have to fix it or deal with it. And then we move on to the next story and there's a different problem with a different robot and the humans have to deal with it. But I will say, I think that the questions posed by this were really, really interesting and very appropriate for a lot of the stuff that's going on right now. Such as, when we have computers replacing what humans do, we still have to remember that there are things that they can't. They just inherently cannot do that humans can. And that's a big topic of debate right now. But also, I really liked a lot of the questions of morality in the way that these robots were treated, because if they are, in fact, intelligences, right? Like, they have personalities, they have desires, they have fears, they can think, then should they not be treated like people? And I think that that's kind of a pervasive theme through all of these short stories in this first book. I will say, according to the synopses for the other 3 books in the series, it does seem like there is a shift into a more like continuous storyline, because we do start to follow a detective within this world who solves crimes that involve both humans and robots. So I'm assuming that at least one of those books, or perhaps all 3 of them, are actually the basis for the movie instead of this first one, because there's literally nothing from the movie that's in here. But I do think that the questions posed in here are really important. I also think it says a lot that this book was first published in 1950. And we had someone who already was asking these questions, and yet now in 2025, 75 years later, people are still making the mistakes that classic science fiction authors have warned against. I think that's interesting. But like I said, I do like the questions of, or the commentary on how humans are still important and necessary, and that there are things that they can do that others cannot. But I also really like I said, the questions, the moral issues posed in here about creation of something and what constitutes personhood, and people who think that they have power over something else and how they treat it. And one thing that I noted, which I brought up in the book club discussion, is the use of pronouns in here. All of the robots are referred to with male pronouns. However, you see shifts in the pronoun usage by the humans depending on their current attitude towards that specific robot. So when they're happy with them, they will refer to them as he and him, as if it is a person. But when there is something, the robot doesn't do what they want or something goes wrong, a lot of the time they shift to it and start basically dehumanizing them and treating them as just a machine and a tool. And I thought that was really interesting. So yeah. Anyway, interesting book. I do really want to continue this series. Maybe not like immediately, but I do definitely want to continue it, especially because, like I said, I like the conversations that were in here, and I think that the other 3 books are going to have that like mystery element that I really enjoy, and a detective character, and I'm also really curious to see how closely they are going to be to the movie adaptation. Next, I read a nice, sweet, cozy fantasy. I needed something a little more lighthearted after Swan Night and iRobot, and that is The Teller of Small Fortunes by Julie Leong. This is actually now the first book in a series, which I'm assuming the series name is the same as the title of the book, because I can't find anything different online. So that's what I'm going with, unless I see otherwise. But there is a second book in this world that is coming out later this year. I believe it comes out this year. Maybe it's early next year. I'm not sure. Anyway, in this one, we follow Tao, who is an immigrant from the country of, is it Shinra? It's either Shinra or Shannara, I can't remember, and has moved to the country of Eshtera when she was young alongside her mother. However, Tao has left home and is traveling around as a traveling fortune teller, but she only tells small fortunes because she has learned that big fortunes can have big consequences. So she only tells small fortunes, but one day as she is traveling, she meets a mercenary and a thief who are best friends and are searching for the mercenary's lost daughter, who has supposedly, potentially been kidnapped. So Tao ends up teaming up with them. They make another friend who is a baker who wants to go out on the road and have an adventure and get better at her craft. And they go on this mission to rescue this little girl, to find her and rescue her. But it's also so much more than that. There's a lot in here that talks about, there is a lot about xenophobia and how we treat people who are different from us. How we view people who are different from us, because alongside that there's also this like some people have this sort of like mystical view of people from other lands as if they're some kind of exotic, interesting thing. So we see that, but we also have really beautiful found family and just a cozy feeling of like acceptance and love and unconditional care that this little group finds with each other. But like there's also, like I said, just there's also the commentary on immigration and people who maybe start to lose the sense that they fit in their past home, but also don't feel like they fit in their current home, and what that can feel like for someone. And we see a lot of that here with Tao, but we also get to see her grow and her get to find herself in her place, and it's really lovely to read. It was very, very lovely. I like I said, I love the found family. I love the really cozy vibes and this nice little band of misfits traveling around on the road and, you know, setting up shop in towns and selling their wares, whether it be physical baked goods or performances or fortune telling. It was really lovely and nice. The one complaint that I really have about this is the cat. Don't get me wrong, I love Fidelitas. He's an adorable little brat, but Okay, this is like a nitpick that I have, not just for this book, but for a lot of books. If you're going to write about an animal, please do some research about that animal before you do so. And I'm not even talking about like personifying animals and making them seem unrealistic compared to how they behave. So I'm not even necessarily talking about behavior, but the things that they feed Fidelitas in here, please do not feed them to your cats. And I know that some people will be like, oh, well, people will read that. They'll know it's fiction. They'll know it's a book. They're not going to actually emulate it. But people actually do, because they think that the stuff that they read is applicable to real life. Please, y'all, like, authors of the world, please stop misrepresenting animal care in stories. I beg of you. As someone who has worked in the veterinary field, I beg of you, please don't. Like I said, if you want to make the animals behave in ways that they wouldn't normally in real life, as long as, you know, there's some sort of explanation for it, like Fidelitas is slightly magical, right? Things like that, that's fine. As long as that's, you know, for story reasons. But please, please stop putting in fake, like false animal care into your stories. Also from this book, kittens should not be removed from their mother until they are at least 6 weeks old. That is the minimum, okay? Just putting that out there as well. So anyway, I'm sorry, I had to go on a little bit of a rant because that bugs me in books, shows, movies, all of it. Again, I get it. One of my favorite manga series is The Heroic Legend of Arslan, and Darian's horse, Shabrang, is much braver and more like competent than real horses. Not that real horses are not brave and competent and amazing, but like I get that, right? Like he's supposed to be the best war horse, right? Like I understand. And Fidelitas is like really haughty and kind of bratty, having lived on the streets and also being slightly magical. Like I get it. But can we please just make the actual care of these animals like make sense? Please. Please. But anyway, I did really love this book. It was really, really sweet. It made me tear up, shed a few tears a number of times. The cover art is actually gorgeous and really gives you a good sense of just the overall feeling of this story. I loved it, truly. The only complaint that I have is what they were feeding the cat and comments about removing kittens from their mom, stuff like that. So anyway, moving past that. The next thing that I read is volume number 3 of I Ship My Rival X Me comic. This is based on a novel or novel series, I'm still not sure which, by Peppa, and is being adapted into a manhwa by Qualia. So this is a full color manhwa translated from Chinese into English, and we follow our two main characters. We have Wei Yanzi and Gu Yiliang, who are both young idols in China who have come onto the scene at the same time, and their fan bases have actually kind of formed a rivalry, and are very negative towards each other and negative about the opposing side's idol. And Gu Yiliang's fans in particular can be very nasty towards Wei Yanzi, which really gets him down because he's afraid maybe he's not actually very talented, maybe he's only getting any success because he is attractive. But one day, he actually finds a third group of fans who like both of them. In fact, they ship them together as a couple. And Wei Yanzi just really likes how positive they are, and he gets kind of involved in this fandom and this ship. At the same time, he's working on a period drama with Gu Yiliang, and they start spending a lot of time together. And so this is a danmei, it is a romance. It's so cute. I just continue to love it. I will say, in volume 3, they're both so stupid. They're so stupid. They're so oblivious They need to talk to each other because it's funny because most of the time you're in Wei Yan's perspective, but as it goes on, we're getting more and more of Gu Yiliang's perspective, and you can see the way that they're both interpreting different behaviors and different like scenes in the story. And it's so funny. I am not usually a fan of the miscommunication trope, but it's like funny here so far. And I just really like this story. It's really, really cute. It's really sweet. I just want these two to like we are seeing progress, definitely, but I want them to communicate with each other so we can actually all be on the same page here. But I'm just really continuing to enjoy this. Yeah, I really like it. It's really cute and really fun. I'm sorry, it's like really hot up here. I have the air on, so if you can hear that, I apologize, but it's so hot. But anyway, next I started a new series, and that is a light novel series called The Ephemeral Scenes of Setsuna's Journey by Rokusio and Usuasagi, and illustrated by Sime or Sime. I'm not really sure how you pronounce that. But I read the first 2 books in the series, so we have The Former 68th Hero and the Beastfolk Apprentice, and The Former 68th Hero and the Dragon Maiden. In this story, we follow Setsuna, who has been very sick his whole life and actually passes away at a young age. He spent pretty much his whole life in the hospital, not able to do much. And after he dies, he wakes up in another world. So this is an isekai, because he has been summoned to be a hero. However, his illness has followed him into this new world, and he is kind of rejected and locked away in shame. But he meets a man who goes by the name of Kyle, who was the actual 68th, no, the 23rd hero, excuse me. He meets a mysterious man named Kyle, who is the 23rd hero and has found the key to immortality. But Kyle decides to give his life and his knowledge of this world and his abilities to Setsuna so that Setsuna will have the opportunity to live. And so he frees Setsuna from his imprisonment, gives his life to him, and Setsuna goes on a journey to live a life and actually experience the world. And along the way, he meets a young little beast folk boy who he rescues from a slaver and who becomes his apprentice. And it's very sweet. Setsuna is a really kind, gentle-hearted character. He becomes an adventurer. I can't remember what they call it in this world, but he becomes like an adventurer and is going and like, completing quests for the guild. And it's just really nice. I will say there are some things in the second book that were really uncomfortable and awkward. Not like in a like it was just that Setsuna's personality seemed to change pretty drastically in part of this one. And I just felt like it was really jarring. And some of the things he was doing, I'm like, that's not really good behavior. Maybe we shouldn't say that. Maybe we shouldn't act like that. Being a little manipulative here. I'm hoping that that's not going to continue going forward and that there is going to be some sort of explanation for that. But it was only in part of the second book, and this is all I've read so far. There are several of these out, so I am behind, but I do really like it enough to continue. I enjoy isekai stories, and I really like Setsuna. It's not like exceptional, but I like it. I like it. I want to see where it goes, so we'll see. Those are really all the thoughts that I have on it so far. It's just a nice, fun little fantasy isekai, and that's about it. It's nothing, like I said, exceptional. But sometimes that's okay, because sometimes all you need is just something to enjoy, so. Okay, next I read volume 1 of McCoy, Now I'm in Love by Ayuko Hata. I really, really enjoyed this. However, I have not continued the series yet because I've been having a lot of migraines lately, which is something that I've struggled with since I was 12, but I think that I needed a break from looking at illustrations. So from looking at the manga, because it takes me actually probably longer to read a manga volume than a lot of people because I really love art. So as I'm reading, I'm trying to look at all the details in the illustrations. And for some reason, it was really stressing me out. With like my headaches and trying to like focus on this art was really actually just hard on my eyes. So I have kind of taken a break from manga for a little bit. I actually later started volume 1 of Seaside Stranger and just had to put it away because even though I was really enjoying that too, I just couldn't. Couldn't really focus on the art. But I did really like this first volume of McCoy. It's really, really cute. It is an adorable high school romance where we follow Satomi, who in middle school had a crush on a boy and never did anything about it, and has kind of regretted that she, you know, will never know what could have happened. So she has made this pact with herself that the next time she has feelings for someone, she's going to let them know. So she ends up meeting Yagyu, who is a boy from her school who helps save her from a very uncomfortable, unfortunate situation on the train one morning, and then she goes to thank him and they start hanging out. And within this first volume, very quickly, they actually decide to become a couple because, of course, Satomi, as I said, has determined that she is going to confess her feelings to the next person she likes. And so the series is just going to be, from what I understand, about them figuring out how to be a couple and their relationship developing. And it was really cute in the first volume. I really liked it, and I really liked the characters, and the art style is really pretty. I really like the way this creator draws hair. I know that's such an odd thing to say, but I just really like it. And it's so flowy and nice. It just has a really pretty feel to the art. So I really, really, really enjoyed this, and I do really want to continue it. I just, like I said, really needed a break from manga, and I'm still continuing that until I feel more up to looking at, you know, all the details on these little panels and stuff again. But it was really, really cute. I really liked it. It's very wholesome. It's very sweet. It's very fluffy. One of my favorite things about this so far is that they make a point of communicating with each other. Yagyu basically tells Satomi, like, you have to tell me stuff. Don't pretend. If you're upset, tell me if you're upset. If you want something, tell me you want something. Like, we have to communicate. And I love that. Healthy communication, for once we are seeing it in a manga. In a romance story at all. I love it. Alright, then the next book that I read is Dawn Thief. This is the first book in Chronicles of the Raven, which is the first series in the Raven saga by James Barclay. This was really fun. I haven't read a fantasy quite like this in a while, where it's very, very focused on battle and adventure, and characters are not safe, which is upsetting. There were a number of times in here where I just got so upset, and I was like just so frustrated, and my mom was like, what's wrong? And I was like, one of my favorite characters just died. A character I really liked just died. So warning you of that, characters are not safe. But this was really fun. We follow this elite group of fighters called the Raven, who are basically a mercenary group where they can be hired by different parties to complete tasks for them, help protect them, fight for them. However, the Raven are kind of deciding maybe that it might be time to retire when they suddenly get involved with a mage from a kind of disreputable group who says that there is a threat to the world. The Witch Lords are returning, the dread Witch Lords, and there is only one way to stop them, and he needs the Raven's help to do it. So, this was really, really fun. It has a lot of the classic fantasy tropes with elves and barbarian warriors and magic colleges, and it was really fun. But it's, how do I want to say this? You follow a number of different perspectives in here, and characters are not always going to do what you think that they are going to do. Like, you really see these characters developing in both positive and negative ways depending on who we're talking about. And as this like situation is developing and deteriorating very rapidly, and this this invading force is coming and they're very overwhelming, and this darkness is falling and this threat is looming on the horizon. And then you have the Raven, who are facing insurmountable odds to try to save the world. And I really enjoyed it. I really liked the camaraderie between the members of the Raven. I think that they make some really, really dumb decisions. Like, they make some dumb decisions in this book. But I can see kind of why they do at times, because, you know, in the heat of the moment in a battle, it's hard to always make the right decision. But I very much enjoyed it. The Chronicles of the Raven is a trilogy, and then there is another series within this world that has 4 books, so it is a quartet. And I am definitely going to continue this series. I just decided to take a little bit of a break because this was the only one from Chronicles of the Raven that I have. I do have the first book in the next series, because I bought it before knowing that there was a series before it within this world. So I do need to get the next 2 books to continue this. And I'm definitely going to. But I don't feel bad taking a break, because where it ends, it definitely resolves this main story, while also then having something happen that is going to lead, I assume, into book 2. But it does feel like a good place to take a pause, and I did really enjoy it, but I'm not in a hurry to buy the next 2 books. But it was really, really fun. So if you're looking for a fantasy that has a lot of battle and a lot of conflict and, you know, a ragtag group trying to save the world, that one is for you. All right, the next, we're not going to talk about it, but I just want to show you, here is the book 4 of Loud of Count's Family. So that was the next one that I read. I read it like as soon as it arrived and I finished Dawn Thief. I moved on to that one. Then the next thing that I read is Kiki's Delivery Service by Aiko Kodono. So I have the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition here and the Fairy Loot edition here. I did read from this one, but they're both illustrated by different illustrators. So I had this one with me as well, so I could look at all of the illustrations as I went, which was really kind of fun. I will say I prefer the illustrations in here just because I feel like the attention to detail was a lot better. There were certain details in the illustrations in the Fairy Loot edition that didn't actually match with the description in the story. However, I really liked the scenery and the architecture in this one better. It was much cozier than in here. But anyway, so Kiki's Delivery Service, we follow Kiki, who is a young witch who on her 13th birthday, in her 13th year, I think it's her 13th year, she has to go out on her own to establish herself as a witch in a town that does not have a witch. And she finds this seaside town called Koriko, and decides to live there and kind of establish herself there. And she has to live there for a year before she can even go visit her parents back home if she wants to stay a witch. So she goes there with her familiar Gigi, her little black cat, and they open a delivery service where she will deliver things for people throughout the town using her magic broom, because the only magic that Kiki actually has is the ability to fly. And so we just get to see Kiki solving a number of problems and kind of establishing herself in this town and learning to live on her own. Well, sort of on her own. She finds a very kind couple who take her in and help her. But yeah, it's just really, really, really cute. And it is a middle grade. It's very just cute and magical, and just a number of different little snippets of Kiki's life throughout this first year in this new town. And it just has such a beautifully magical feel to it, and it's just very wholesome and sweet, and I really like it. However, when I got to the end of this book, I was like, I feel like there should be more. And I looked it up, and it is actually a series with, I think, either 6 or 8 books in it, but only the first book has been published in English. Or at least I saw one person say that the others had been published in English a long time ago, but were out of print, but I haven't been able to find any other record of that, so I'm not sure. But the point of the matter is they're not being published in English now, which is really frustrating because I want to find out what else happens to Kiki. And from what I understand, going by the author's note, which I also read, the other books in the series show Kiki as she grows up. And I want to see that. So hopefully with the attention, a lot of these novels, so this was the basis, the inspiration for a Studio Ghibli film of the same name. And these Studio Ghibli novels are getting a lot of attention now. And like with the Fairy Loot editions that are coming out, maybe the rest of the series will get an English publication. I hope so. I hope so, but we'll have to wait and see. But I did really enjoy this one. It was very, very cute and very wholesome. I do recommend reading it in the summer, just because while it does go through a whole year, so we do see a lot of different seasons, I just feel like the summery parts were very summery. So, okay, then the next book that I finished, which I was actually reading while I was reading book 4 of Loud of Count's Family and Kiki's Delivery Service, is How to Seal Your Own Fate. This is the second book in the Castle Knoll Files by Kristen Perrin. And I was actually reading this with my mom, so we were buddy reading it together. What we would do is I read the first 2 chapters, then she read my chapters and 2 additional chapters, then I read her 2, and then 2 more, and we just kept passing the book back and forth. And that way we could talk with each other about our theories, because this is a mystery novel. It is the second in a series, so I'll just kind of give you a brief synopsis for the first one, which is How to Solve Your Own Murder. And in that book, you follow 2 perspectives. First, we have Frances, who in the 60s, when she was 16, went to a carnival with her friends and got a fortune from a fortune teller telling her that she was going to be murdered. So she spends the next 60 years trying to either prevent her murder or at the very least make sure if she can't, it will be able to be solved. And she collects a lot of secrets about the people in the small town where she lives called Castle Knoll. So we have her perspective with her diary entries from that year that she got that fortune. Then we also follow Annie, who is Frances's great niece. And in the present day, Annie has received a notice that she has been added to Frances's will and needs to travel to Castle Knoll to meet with her and her lawyer and some other people who are mentioned in the will. But when they get there, Great Aunt Frances has actually been murdered. So now Annie is trying to solve the murder using Great Aunt Frances's clues that she has left behind so that she can solve this murder and inherit the Gravesdown estate, because Aunt Frances was the widow of the wealthiest man in Castle Knoll. And there's a lot more involved in it with this mystery that is starting to come to light from the past and is infecting the present day. But in this story, in the second book, we are continuing in the same town with Annie and with Frances, and more secrets are being uncovered. And it's just such a fun mystery. I didn't like this one as much as the first one, but I really did enjoy it. It's set in England in this little country town with this big, huge manor and estate, and then this little village, and a character who is just very smart, very clever, but also quite young and quite like figuring herself out. And I just really liked it. I really, really like kind of unraveling these mysteries alongside Annie. And again, I did in this one kind of figure out who the culprit was, but I also kind of convinced myself I was wrong, because I was like, probably not. But I wasn't wrong. But I kind of was, because I convinced myself that it wasn't true. But anyway, I did really, really enjoy this one. My mom really enjoyed it as well. We had a really fun time throwing theories back and forth. There is a third book coming out in the series that's coming out, I think, next year. I'm so excited because the way that this one ends, there is definitely implications for book 3. So really, really fun murder mystery series. It's a really, really good time, and I really like trying to piece it together and getting the clues. You do have to keep straight the 2 different perspectives, because Annie hasn't always caught up with her knowledge of Aunt Frances. Like, her knowledge of Aunt Frances's diaries and notes and stuff isn't always at the same place that yours is as the reader, so you have to kind of keep in mind what Annie knows and what Frances knows, which is really interesting. But yeah, it's a very fun like setup, having those two different perspectives 60 some years apart. I like it a lot. And it's also just a really fun experience to read with my mom and get to discuss the mystery together, so I really like that. Okay, 2 books left. The next one is Icelandic Folktales. This is just a little short book of some folktales that were collected from different places throughout Iceland, and compiled in this tiny little book. My cousin got it for me when she and her husband went to Iceland a couple years ago, and I just hadn't read it yet, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just read this. And I just sat down and read all of them, and they were interesting. They're like not told in a very, they're told in kind of a very like factual, this is what happened manner. There's no real like atmosphere to them, but it was still really interesting to kind of see these stories that come from this other culture and kind of the beliefs that they have, and it was very interesting. I did really enjoy it, and it was very sweet of my cousin to get this for me. Okay, last book for this wrap up is Vesuvius by Cass Bain? I'm not sure. I loved this book. This takes place in Pompeii in the days leading up to the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, if you can't tell by the title and the cover art. And we follow 2 young boys. We have Felix, who is a thief who has recently arrived in Pompeii and steals something from a temple there that suddenly makes him a target. The target of a very mysterious figure in the city. And as he is fleeing, he ends up going in a temple of Isis and running into Lauren, who is one of the like apprentices there. However, Lauren instantly recognizes Felix, even though they've never met before, because Lauren has been having prophetic dreams since he was very young, and his most recent ones have all involved Felix and the destruction of the city. So the 2 of them kind of team up together. They're kind of forced to team up together at first to figure out who is targeting Felix, what exactly is going on with what he's stolen, and Lauren is also trying to figure out what his dreams mean and how Felix is related to them, and perhaps how to stop this catastrophic event that he has been seeing. And I really, really like this book. It did not read in the way that I expected based on that premise, but I really enjoyed it. Again, I really enjoyed this mystery, and I 100% called one of the big parts of it. Definitely. But I really enjoyed this mystery and all of these different characters in here who have different motivations and different schemes going on. And then I will also say, this is a story of Pompeii. I had to keep reminding myself of that as I was getting attached to a lot of the side characters, and I was like, as someone who has always been very interested in the history of Pompeii and in its destruction, which was extremely tragic, I know how this is going to end, you know? So when you're getting attached to a lot of these side characters, this is not a spoiler. Like, Mount Vesuvius erupted. So keep that in mind as you're reading this, because at times I would forget, and then I was like, wait a second. But it is a very, very fun story. I really enjoyed it. I really loved the way the author incorporated a lot of mythology and a lot of the culture of ancient Rome in here. Now, they do admit very clearly in their author's note that while a lot of research was done, this is not completely historically accurate. So do keep that in mind if you are someone who is very knowledgeable about ancient Roman history and Pompeii specifically. It is not completely accurate, but it is a really, really fun book, especially for someone who loves that time period. And these characters are so lovable, and seeing them like learning to, like seeing them grow and seeing them, they both have a lot of self-doubt for different reasons. They both have distrust in people and the idea of connection with others, again, for different reasons. But seeing the two of them come together and really start to care about one another, and learning to put someone else first over yourself, and even when the other person makes a mistake and you're angry, like not giving up on them. I really, really loved all of that, and it was just really delightful to read. I really, really enjoyed it. And it is hard when you as the reader know what's gonna happen. Like I said, and you're reading about all these other characters who are just living their lives in Pompeii, and you know what's going to occur, and these characters do not. So that's interesting. If you're a character-focused reader and you get attached very easily like I do keep that in mind. But I loved this. I loved it. It was amazing. I just think it was beautifully written. I really liked it. I'm sure that there are probably people who are going to have some problems with this for whatever reason, but I really, really enjoyed it. I also really recommend it for summer because it takes place in the summer and everything is hot. They're constantly talking about how hot the weather is. So it made sense to read during the heat and sitting out on the porch with my dog and just like with the fan going and just being like, even in the evening when it's like dark and the fireflies are floating around, being like, I'm going to die. So anyway, that's it. Those are all of the books that I read in the second quarter of the year. It was a really, really good time. Like this year, I have read so many things that I have just absolutely loved. It's just been so much fun. So much fun. So yeah, I hope that you have also had a really good time with the stories you've been consuming lately. I would love to hear what you've been reading in the second quarter, or what you're reading now, or if you've read any of these books, like what thoughts you have on them. Just as always, please keep all comments spoiler free. Or if you're interested in any of these now that you've heard me talk about them. I'd also love it if you guys have any feedback for how I do these wrap-ups. If you think maybe I should, when I have a lot of books like this, split them into 2 videos, or you know, if I need to go more in depth on the books, because I tried to give my thoughts without going too in depth just for the sake of time here. But if you guys would like me to go more in depth on my thoughts, you know, please let me know. I'm 100% would love to hear what you think. Yeah. I am going to be doing my media wrap-up next week, so any shows that I watched or video games that I played or podcasts I listened to, anything like that within the second quarter, we'll talk about those as well, because you can also find great stories in other mediums aside from reading as well. So yeah, so I hope you guys are looking forward to that. But anyway, if you want to leave an emoji, let's do a little volcano emoji in honor of Vesuvius. So if you want to leave an emoji with your comment, or you just want to let me know that you were here but you don't really have anything else to say, you can put some little volcanoes down there. It's late and I still have some things that I need to do before I go to bed, and the rain outside is making me sleepy. So I'm gonna go, but thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for being here with me and listening to me just kind of ramble on about all of these books. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you in my next one. Oh, and I hope that you're having a wonderful day or a wonderful night wherever you are. Bye!